TGIF, congratulations. You made it to Friday. Thank you so much for being with us on this Friday afternoon. It is now 3 p.m. in the East and 12 p.m. out West. I'm Veronica Cruz. Welcome to Scripps News Live. So President Biden will formally announce his intent to run for re-election next week. It's all according to 3 Associated Press sources close to the president. And they're telling the AP that the Biden 2024 campaign is full steam ahead. The Associated Press says the timing of next week's announcement has yet to be finalized, but it could come as soon as Tuesday. And that is 4 years to the day that Biden entered the 2020 presidential race. National political correspondent Kevin Cirilli has more now on the president's political future from Washington.
President Biden set to announce that he is going to run for re-election in 2024, and he will reportedly make that announcement as early as next week. A Biden Democratic strategist tells me that he will run on a message of continuing the path forward from former President Trump, that he was able to end the COVID-19 pandemic and reopen the economy and pass major legislation such as the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, I spoke with a progressive source, a progressive strategist close to the Bernie Sanders Warren wing of the party. This source said that they are not going to run a progressive policy challenger. On the Republican side, former President Trump remains the early frontrunner for the Republican Party. He is leading by double digits against his nearest competitor, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Sources close to the Trump 2024 campaign tell me that they feel emboldened and ready for a matchup, a rematch of 2020. They're looking at President Biden's disapproval number, which according to Gallup tracking has him at a disapproval of 52.7%. His approval rating at 42.4%. So all of this comes separately as there is talk of a potential third-party challenger. Now, whether or not a third-party challenger would be able to make an impact on the race or in battleground states remains to be seen. People like Robert F. Kennedy. I spoke with a source earlier who's close to Marianne Williamson, who said that Biden's announcement next week is not impacting her strategy, her decision, or her weighing whether or not to stay in a 2024 race. I also spoke to a centrist strategist who is in conversations about the prospects of a unity ticket, for example. This strategist said Biden getting into the race not going to impact those calculations either. Regardless, the 2024 presidential cycle now in full swing as again President Biden set to announce that he will seek re-election for 2024 as early as the coming days. Reporting from Washington, Kevin Cirilli, Scripps News.
A man accused of shooting a 6-year-old girl and her parents in North Carolina over a basketball is expected in court today. 24-year-old Robert Singletary turned himself in yesterday in Tampa, which is more than 550 miles from Gastonia, North Carolina, where the shooting happened on Tuesday. Singletary is charged with attempted first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon. And according to a neighbor, the attack happened after kids went to retrieve a basketball that rolled into his yard. A bullet grazed 6-year-old Kinsley White's cheek and grazed her mother's elbow. Her father was shot in the back and is still in the hospital. In the meantime, 6 people, including 3 teenagers, are now charged in a deadly shooting at a Dadeville, Alabama Sweet 16. 4 people were killed and 32 others injured last Saturday night. All 6 suspects are charged with reckless murder. Investigators have not yet shared a motive. And gun reform advocates are saying these recent incidents are proving that too many guns are ending up in the wrong hands. A recent Gallup poll found 45% of American households own a firearm. National correspondent Clayton Sandell explains that that is the highest number in a decade.
You know, these shootings often have a ripple effect that go far beyond just the people who are involved or the communities where they happen. And in fact, we were reading today a recent study from the American Psychological Association that found 3/4 of adults say that the threat of gun violence is a significant form of stress. Wrong turns and simple misunderstandings that change lives forever.
My daughter was an honor student. She had hopes and dreams of becoming. She had hopes and dreams of becoming a marine biologist or a veterinarian.
20-year-old Kaylin Gillis shot dead after turning down the wrong driveway in New York. In Texas, 2 cheerleaders wounded in a case of mistaken identity.
It's not a good sign of where we're headed. It's incredibly unbelievable.
And in Kansas City, a black teenager, Ralph Yarl, sent to pick up his brothers, had the wrong address. He was shot twice.
And it's so hard to believe that this amount of hate lives in people.
Different people, hundreds of miles apart, all connected by the same thread of unprovoked gun violence.
We are becoming a heavily armed nation, so fearful and angry and hair-trigger anxious that gun murders are now just the way in which we work out our frustrations.
Experts who study gun violence say shootings like these are happening partly because society is teaching people to be afraid and mistrust each other and the government, even when crime is going down.
People are really bombarded with images and information that tells them that they are living in a very dangerous world. You're the only one who can protect yourself, and the way to protect yourself is with a loaded gun at the ready.
Guns are also easy to get, and there's more of them. More than half of U.S. states don't require a permit to carry a concealed firearm.
We have normalized what used to be abnormal.
And so-called stand your ground laws that give people more rights to defend themselves may be leading people to shoot first and ask questions later.
All the evidence shows that they have only led to more violence, particularly lethal violence.
Until something changes, Webster says there will be more shootings like the one in North Carolina, where a neighbor opened fire on a 6-year-old girl and her father after their basketball rolled into the suspect's yard.
Why did you shoot my daddy and me?
And that was Clayton Sandell reporting there for us. Now we're learning more about the gunman in the deadly Louisville bank shooting 2 weeks ago. Connor Sturgeon reportedly left 2 extensive notes revealing his motive. Now one note was found on him, the other found in his home, and they reportedly detail that he wanted to kill himself and prove how easy it is for a mentally ill person to buy a gun in Kentucky. He bought an AR-15 type rifle a week before the attack and killed 5 co-workers before police shot and killed him. His family told investigators that he was suffering from depression, but he never showed a violent side. His brain will be examined for signs of CTE, a disorder caused by repeated head trauma. Involuntary manslaughter charges will soon be dropped against actor Alec Baldwin in connection with the deadly shooting on the Rust movie set in 2021. However, prosecutors are saying there are new facts that will require study and forensic analysis, and there's a chance that those charges could be refiled. Involuntary manslaughter charges remain for the film's weapons supervisor, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. In the meantime, the film's cinematographer, Helena Hutchins, was killed when a gun Baldwin pointed at her fired. Baldwin is insisting that he never pulled the trigger. And you can take a deeper dive on all of these stories and a whole lot more online. Check us out at Scripps News on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. Still ahead on Scripps News Live, a Georgia woman lost several limbs after a zip-lining accident, but that only pushed her to help others just like her. Scripps News correspondent Stephen Graddick joining us live with her story. Stephen?
Hey, Veronica, I'll share the inspiring story of Amy Copeland and how she found a way to reconnect with nature while making her mission to encourage people just like her to do the same. Scripps News will be back in just a short break.
This is an important legal announcement for all firefighters, first responders, airport workers, members of the military, and their families. Firefighter occupational cancer is the leading cause of deaths in the fire service. Cancer accounted for more than 74% of deaths in 2022. You may have been exposed to chemical-based firefighting foam known to cause cancer. If you or a loved one were exposed, you may be entitled to significant cash compensation. Call the number on your screen now for your free case consultation. Aqueous Film Forming Foam, or AFF, has been used to extinguish fires for years. Studies now show there are highly toxic chemicals used to make this foam. These chemicals can cause many types of cancer and illnesses. Call now to see if you're eligible for the cash compensation you deserve without having to go to court. The call and consultation are absolutely free. The time to file your claim is limited, so don't wait and call now. Just call 800-346-7670 now. That's 800-346-7670.
At Omaha Steaks, we do burgers differently. We take a premium aged steak like this and turn it into a pure ground burger like this. So this is actually a ribeye. This is a New York strip, top sirloin, beef brisket, and this is a filet mignon. for a limited time. Our Burger Perfection flight comes with 20 big, juicy burgers, all for just $79.99, plus free shipping. Get it today at omahasteaks.com/TV. This is Burger Perfection, guaranteed.
What does it take to be a top driver? Is it about speed? Is it about control? For me, it's about winning. Build your ultimate competition garage. Top Drives. Play for free.
We need a small business loan fast.
I got this. Loan Falcon!
There's a better way to get a fast small business loan. Go to OnDeck.com, and if approved, get your funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
But it wasn't the photos and it wasn't the video that changed my life. It was understanding the stories behind them.
You know, when you're ready, I'll have your baby for you. Like something that was meant to be.
There's good to it, there's a lot of bad to it, but that's life.
It worries me.
Brotherhood to me is everything. We've opened up a whole new world.
I was really confused by that. I was like, wait, hang on. Well, tomorrow we're going to be celebrating Earth Day, and it's a time to give our planet some extra love and care while raising awareness of the ongoing mission to save the planet. Many will be marking Earth Day by maybe visiting a park, but for people with mobility impairments, that may not be as easy as you might think. National correspondent Stephen Graddick joining us now live with a story that has been bridging the gap between accessibility and the ability to enjoy the great outdoors. Stephen?
Yeah, happy Earth Day to you, early Earth Day to you, Veronica. That's right. We sat down with Amy Copeland, the director and CEO of All Terrain Georgia. And through our conversation, I learned a lot about her inspiring healing journey. And she talks a little bit about her involvement in creating a program that allows those with disabilities to enjoy what Mother Nature has to offer.
The mission of All Terrain Georgia is to enable all Georgians and our visitors, people visiting from out of state with mobility impairments, to be able to enjoy the nurturing and healing qualities that our vast natural resources in our state have to offer.
Enjoying nature was something Amy Copeland wasn't sure she'd do again after a ziplining accident in 2012. She was diagnosed with a flesh-eating bacterial infection. She lost her hands, right foot, and left leg. They'd been amputated. She was 24 and frustrated.
I had been an ecotherapy major in my master's program and wanted to be like a wilderness guide. And waking up missing my limbs, I thought, well, probably those 10-mile hikes in the woods aren't going to happen anymore. And I started Amy Copeland Foundation because I saw that it's actually people who have disabilities who needed ecotherapy the most and are the most separated from the natural environment.
From there, All Terrain Georgia was born. From extensive research to fundraising, it took about 8 years to launch the program. Amy's foundation partnered with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, and last year opened the program to the public with 12 chairs. And thanks to a generous donation, that fleet will soon grow to 24.
Right now we have them in the northern half of Georgia, and so we'd really like to partner with her to have them in the southern half of Georgia as well. She and her volunteers go out and personally scout the trails and pick which ones would be appropriate for the track chairs. So definitely this is the kind of project that could go all across the country.
There are similar projects in Michigan, Colorado, South Dakota, and Minnesota. In Georgia, Amy hopes to have chairs in every state park by the end of this year.
If you build it, they will come. People think people with disabilities don't want to be at the parks because you never see them there, but we do. We want to be out and about and everywhere. So I'd like to see these chairs being used on a daily basis. Oh, very cool. That's awesome.
You have to be certified to use the chair. Amy's goal? To certify an additional 100 users this year. You also have to be certified to be a hiking buddy. Both credentials ensure the safety of the chair's user and helps protect the environment.
We train people to leave no trace and to use our equipment in safe and responsible ways. And the all-terrain chairs that we use have zero footprint, zero carbon emissions. They're very safe for our soil, because one of my most important prerogatives is that our children's children are able to also enjoy and utilize the land.
The way the treads are designed,
it does significantly less damage than, for example, athletes' cleats out here on the trail. It's not penetrating the soil as much, so we don't really have to worry about erosion. All of our chair users who have been here have been amazing stewards for our park in particular. I've had folks who have gone out and used the chair and have actually come back with bags full of litter that they cleaned up just while they were enjoying the trails.
He just likes being able to go outside and sniff things.
Amy's next step is purchasing a van that can transport the chairs to different parks in Georgia. She doesn't want anyone to be limited in their ability or opportunity to get out and enjoy life.
People say this is a game changer for them. This is allowing them to do, for some people who have congenital disabilities, it's allowing them to go to places they've never been before. For people who have acquired disabilities, it's returning them to nature and allowing them to return to their home and the things that they love and their hobbies. Some users have reported like it just lets them walk their dog. Like very simple things that we take for granted.
For Amy, this is the pride and joy of her foundation, and she's honored to provide a transformative opportunity for all bodies and abilities. Stephen Graddick, Scripps News.
Well, according to the CDC, 1 in 4 adults have disabilities, so this is going to help a lot of people, Veronica.
Such a great story, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And of course, happy Earth Day to you.
Happy Earth Day to you. Have a good weekend.
You too. Coming up next on Scripps News Live, all eyes on the Supreme Court as we await a decision that could impact 40 million American women. That's next.
Attention Medicare recipients. Are you on Medicaid, newly eligible for Medicare, losing coverage, or moving? Did you know certain beneficiaries may qualify for a government Medicare savings program based on income verification to add up to $164 back to their Social Security check every month? Get a free Medicare Advantage plan review to see if you qualify to enroll. Just call 800-459-6483. Our licensed sales agents can also help determine if you may qualify for a Medicare savings program. This program helps lower Medicare costs like premiums, deductibles, and coinsurance. Just call 800-459-6483. Certain beneficiaries may qualify based on income verification to add up to $164 back to their Social Security check every month. You don't get these savings automatically. Call now. The call and Medicare Advantage plan review are free. There is no obligation to enroll. Just call 800-459-6483. That's 800-459-6483. Attention Medicare recipients. Are you on Medicaid, newly eligible for Medicare, losing coverage, or moving? Did you know certain beneficiaries may qualify for a government Medicare savings program based on income verification to add up to $164 back to their Social Security check every month? Get a free Medicare Advantage plan review to see if you qualify to enroll. Just call 800-459-6483. Our licensed sales agents can also help determine if you may qualify for a Medicare savings program. This program helps lower Medicare costs like premiums, deductibles, and coinsurance. Just call 800-459-6483. Certain beneficiaries may qualify based on income verification to add up to $164 back to their Social Security check every month. You don't get these savings automatically. Call now. The call and Medicare Advantage plan review are free. There is no obligation to enroll. Just call 800-459-6483. That's 800-459-6483.
Make your gift personal this Mother's Day with custom glass prints show love. Images are printed directly on glass in brilliant color and clarity. Turn your memories with Mom into remarkably different prints. Go to tryfracture.com and get 30% off orders over $50.
Sure, you'll teach her to drive a car. Then use Greenlight and teach her to save up for her own car. Mowing lawns and getting paid. Navigate the world of earning, saving, and investing together. Invest in your best investment. Greenlight.
Attention all eligible Medicare beneficiaries. If you're on Medicare, you can now get COVID-19 tests sent to your home every month at absolutely no cost to you. That's right, get up to 8 at-home COVID-19 rapid antigen tests delivered directly to your home for absolutely no cost, including free shipping. Just call 800-578-1380 now to get your COVID-19 test delivered to your door at absolutely no cost to you. Don't get caught without your no-cost at-home COVID test. Just call 800-578-1380 right now to get your COVID-19 COVID-19 test delivered right to your door at absolutely no cost to you. Just call 800-578-1380 right now. This Medicare program provides easy access to request at-home COVID-19 tests at no cost. If you're on Medicare, call 800-578-1380 right now and request up to 8 at-home COVID-19 tests each month delivered to your home at absolutely no cost to you, including free shipping. Call 800-578-1380.
You know how your car insurance rates just kind of creep up? Experian compares your current car insurance coverage with over 40 top providers, and it's tailored just for you.
I just saved over $900.
When it comes to car insurance, we do the work, you save the money. Free at Experian.com/car.
Hey, folks, the league is in absolute chaos.
Come down to some rookie taking free throws. We got the young guys going on.
The Athletic. Subscribe today.
Welcome back to Scripps News Live. We are keeping a close eye right now on the developing story that could impact 40 million American women. The Supreme Court giving itself until midnight tonight to decide the future of a commonly used abortion pill, mifepristone. Justices set to meet today to decide if there should be any restrictions against this drug. 2 weeks ago, a Texas judge revoked FDA approval of the drug, a notion the FDA and medical experts have countered. And then less than a week later, an appeals court ruled the pill can remain available, but with restrictions. And then last week, the Justice Department and the maker of mifepristone asked the High Court for emergency relief to keep the drug available while the federal case over FDA approval continues to make its way through the courts. Correspondent Tony Waterman live for us right now in Austin, Texas. And Tony, this case started there in Texas. So do us a favor and break it all down from the very beginning. How is it that we arrived here?
Well, this was a lawsuit that was filed back in November by a group of anti-abortion doctors who claimed that the FDA had not followed proper protocols when it approved mifepristone 23 years ago, and that it had overlooked what this group of doctors say are legitimate safety concerns. It's important to note here, though, that in the past 2 decades, mifepristone has been used by more than 5 million women in the United States, and that it has repeatedly been shown to be safe and effective. But they went ahead, they filed this lawsuit, and they did it intentionally in Amarillo, Texas, because they knew that the case would go before Matthew Kacsmaryk. He's a federal judge that was appointed by former President Donald Trump. He is a former lawyer at the First Liberty Institute, which is a conservative Christian law firm, and he is a well-known staunch anti-abortionist, and so they intentionally filed it in his court. He heard the case, he listened to oral arguments, and then earlier this month, he issued this unprecedented ruling revoking the FDA approval for mifepristone. But importantly here, he gave the government a week to file an appeal. It did so immediately, which means that it moved on to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. They partially blocked Kacsmaryk's ruling. They left in place the FDA approval, but they put severe limits around mifepristone's use and distribution. So they barred it from being sent in the mail, and also rolled back the window in which somebody can take this medication from 10 weeks back down to 7 weeks. That again was appealed, and this is how we have landed at the Supreme Court. We thought that earlier this week that we would get some sort of decisions, but the justices deciding that they needed a bit more time, and that is where we find ourselves today, less than 10 hours now from a decision.
And Tony, how quickly could Texas act once the Supreme Court hands down its ruling?
Well, it will depend on what sort of ruling it hands down, but any sort of restrictions that they decide to keep in place would be effective immediately. And it's important to remember that this would not just be a ruling for the state of Texas because the case was filed here. This would have nationwide implications, even in states where abortion has been is allowed, has been protected, where voters have gone and enshrined that right in their constitutions since Roe was overturned by the Supreme Court last year, so this could impact tens of millions of women. And I think that most legal scholars agree that because of the unprecedented nature of potentially revoking the FDA's approval for this medication, that it could lead to absolute legal chaos. How would this be implemented? It has never happened before. So there is a lot of concern on that front, and it's even more complicated because, of course, we have this competing ruling from a federal judge from Washington State, which has ordered the FDA to maintain the status quo when it comes to access to mifepristone in 17 states and the District of Columbia.
And Tony, many people are watching this decision closely. They're watching, they are waiting. We know the White House, the Biden administration has been doing so, as well as, millions of women across the United States. What about Texas? I know you're there in Texas. Have you seen any reaction there?
Well, abortions here in Texas have been essentially illegal since the Supreme Court overturned Roe last June. And actually, even before then, from the September before, there was a 6-week ban that was in place. And that ban on abortion, except in extreme situations, includes the abortion pills. So legally, it would not be very consequential here in Texas. But there has been the development of this underground network of pill distribution that has been taking place. So if it's barred from being sent through the mail, this could impact women that have been getting this pill illegally here in Texas. And also, there have been thousands of women that have gone to other states, even to Mexico, where abortion is legal, to have these procedures done. If mifepristone is used in more than half abortions. It's sent through the mail. So that means these women aren't showing up at clinics. If now all of these women looking for abortions have to show up at clinics, there's going to be a backlog, which means it's going to become even more difficult for women who are traveling from states where it's barred, like here in Texas, to access this care.
Tony Waterman live for us there in Austin, Texas. Tony, thank you so much. And like I was just saying, so many people across the country right now, President Biden, Congress, all awaiting today's ruling. Congressional correspondent Nathan Reed picking up that side of the story now.
Well, the White House is bracing for this particular ruling. It's still not clear which direction the Supreme Court will go in. But at the same time, remember earlier this week that the Supreme Court gave itself additional time to come up with this actual decision in this case. And so the White House has really been saying the same message all week, which is no matter what happens out of the Supreme Court, we'll be prepared.
Well, what we can tell American women is that we're going to continue to fight. We've been very clear about that. We feel that the law is on our side here, and clearly we're going to wait to see what the court decisions will be later at some point today. As we know, the deadline, this day will expire tonight. But this is something that the president, the vice president, has been very clear on. We are going to continue to fight for women's reproductive rights. This is something where the majority of Americans agree with us on. And so, again, this is a fight that we are willing to have, that we will continue to have, and that we have been having, and that's what the women, millions of women across the country, can really count on when it comes to this administration.
Meanwhile, the White House has also sent out memos to reporters with the opinions of certain conservative legal scholars who disagree with the Fifth Circuit's decision to invalidate the FDA approval of this abortion pill. Additionally, on Capitol Hill, Democratic lawmakers have been pointing to Republicans as the ones who are against abortion rights and abortion access. Now, Democrats have previously introduced the Women's Health Protection Act, which currently doesn't really stand much of a chance, given that the House of Representatives is in Republican control, and in the Senate you need 60 votes, the filibuster, in order to pass most legislation. So even though congressional Democrats are interested in passing that sort of bill and sending it to President Biden, it still doesn't seem likely. Here's Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Of course, Congress can get involved. Congress can pass the Women's Protection Act like that. That's what I would do. That's what Democrats in the Senate want to do, to protect not just medical abortion with medication, but also to make sure that we protect a woman's right to choose. Our Republican colleagues, for the most part, have been silent on this. And we are standing up, the Democratic Party, President Biden, for women's rights to say women have a right to make their own health care decisions and not politicians.
And again, we're not exactly sure which way the court is going to rule on this later today. The message, though, from Democrats, both on Capitol Hill and at the White House, we're ready no matter what happens. Back to you.
All right, Nate, thank you so much. So doctors, clinics, and emergency rooms are all on alert right now. We're going to speak to a doctor about many states banning the veterinary tranquilizer that has been contributing to drug overdoses. We'll explain after this.
If you're living with diabetes, this sound may save your life. A continuous glucose monitor provides glucose readings and alerts you in real time to potential lows and harmful spikes without painful finger sticks. It's easy, convenient, and proven to lower your A1C. If you administer insulin, you may qualify for a continuous glucose monitor at no cost to you. Call now. It could save your life. Just call 800-233-6176. This new GCM technology immediately eliminates your pain and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. That means no more guessing. It's easy to see your glucose number any time of the day. Call now and get free shipping. Plus, we'll bill your insurance company for you. Satisfaction guaranteed. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control of your diabetes now. Just call 800-233-6176. That's 800-233-6176.
How does Klein Inspector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein Inspector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein Inspector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein Inspector.
What does it take to be a top driver? Is it about speed? Is it about control? For me, it's about winning. Build your ultimate competition garage. Top Drives. Play for free. Download now from your app store.
Musical instruments dating back to the Holocaust are finding new purpose.
Playing the music, help them survive, help them keep sane.
Introducing Violins of Hope. Tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Scripps News Reports.
Welcome back to Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica Cruz. Health officials say a veterinary tranquilizer is now making its way into illegal drugs. And now states are looking to make this drug a controlled substance. National correspondent Stephanie Sandoval tells us why this drug has been causing major problems for hospital workers.
It's known as Tranq on the streets. Xylazine is a veterinary tranquilizer used to sedate large animals like cows, but is now being found in illicit drugs like fentanyl, a powerful opioid. It's prompting states, most recently Pennsylvania, to add it to its list of controlled substances. Meanwhile, other states are also on the lookout. In Florida, FamiliesRecover.org founder John Nelson, a group that helps loved ones deal with addiction, plans to ramp up his group's awareness of Tranq.
You know, when you got somebody that's in the trade that's making like Molly, or they're taking fentanyl and cutting it with Tranq, it's all about the profit margin.
The drug is also alarming to medical professionals since much is still unknown about xylazine and how it affects humans. Jean-Marie Perrone, an emergency physician and the director of the Center for Addiction Medicine and Policy at the University of Pennsylvania, says local drug testing shows xylazine almost always co-occurs with fentanyl.
Some people's theory about why xylazine is being added is because the fentanyl is so potent and relatively short-acting that it was added to make it a little bit more longer lasting and to not have the potential deadly respiratory depressant effects that fentanyl is essentially known for.
According to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, about 23% of fentanyl powder and 7% of fentanyl pills seized by the DEA contained xylazine in 2022. Earlier this month, the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy declared fentanyl combined with xylazine as an emerging drug threat in the U.S. During a news conference late last month, Senator Chuck Schumer warned xylazine is deadly and dangerous.
And it causes severe wounds to the skin, sometimes all the way to the bone. It creates a lot of dead tissue. There are breathing and heart rate issues, and the infections from these wounds can often lead to people even losing their limbs.
Perone says the wounds are different from what she's ever seen.
We are not absolutely sure that xylazine is associated with these wounds, but I think we are pretty sure that xylazine has increased and changed the landscape of what these wounds look like. We're seeing these very large open wounds, which are not like abscesses or superficial skin infections. These are much deeper wounds that tend to be open and tend to progress in a way that is with a term that we call necrosis, which means a lot of the tissue actually disappears.
These wounds lead to more issues post heavy use or overdose.
Because of these wounds, paradoxically, many patients can't get into rehabs because rehabs aren't really equipped for the medical complications of wound care.
In November, the FDA warned healthcare professionals routine toxicology screens do not detect xylazine, making it harder to treat people that come in.
We don't have widespread testing. If somebody shows up in the emergency department, we can test for opioids, but we don't have widely available tests for xylazine.
To reverse an opioid overdose, the FDA says naloxone, also known as Narcan, should be used on everyone who overdoses, even though it doesn't work on xylazine since it's not an opioid.
We don't want to propagate this idea that there is no antidote for xylazine. We don't really think we need an antidote for xylazine at the moment.
Stephanie Sandoval, Scripps News.
Dr. David Edwards is here now to help us try and understand this a little more. He's an associate professor of anesthesiology and is the neurological surgery chief at Vanderbilt. Doctor, thank you so much for your time today.
Nice to be with you.
So like we just saw there, those manufacturing these street drugs have been cutting them with this animal tranquilizer xylazine. Now, because it's used for animals, what does it do to the human body? What happens when you mix xylazine and fentanyl?
So xylazine alone would be sedating. When you mix it with fentanyl, which is also sedating, very potently sedating, you have what's called a synergistic effect. Very, very potent, very, very rapid onset. But xylazine is longer acting, and so you're sedated for longer. Often patients people who will take fentanyl get a high that doesn't last very long. So mixing it with xylazine, maybe that high lasts a lot longer. Unfortunately, the combination of the two is exceptionally deadly.
How easy is it to access this? And considering how bad the opioid epidemic is in this country right now, is there another animal tranquilizer that veterinarians can be using?
Well, it's very common. It's been around for at least a couple of decades now, and it's very widespread use in the veterinary world. It's not been used for humans. There are better drugs for humans. But to take away a tool from one industry is by making it illegal is very harmful to that industry. Unfortunately, you're right. It's having a huge impact. It's just one of another of maybe 50 to 100 new synthetic type of drugs that are being cut with fentanyl and making this opioid epidemic even worse.
So we understand that Narcan doesn't work with xylazine. So if a person is overdosing on opioids, is there anything else that can be done?
So definitely Narcan. We don't know, our tests, like was mentioned, our tests aren't showing or testing for xylazine yet. So the answer right now is always give Narcan. We have to reverse that fentanyl. And then we do what's called supportive care. If a person's heart rate is low or a person's blood pressure is low or their respiratory rate is low, then we support those systems. We can, pace a person so their heart rate is increased or give them certain medications that increase their heart rate. And emergency medical people will know how to manage supportive care. For the general population, Narcan, you should run and grab your Narcan and treat the patient until emergency medicine arrives.
So let me know if I understand this correctly, because I think that you had said that there aren't tests right now for xylazine, meaning we don't know if it's in a person's system. Are there symptoms then to look out for if a person is overdosing in order to tell whether or not this is something that they do have in their system?
It's going to look very similar to a standard overdose from an opioid. The patient's not going to be responsive. Their respiratory rate's going to be very slow. So externally, you're not going to be able to tell. at this point. So you're going to have to assume that it's the potent fentanyl and treat that with Narcan. The duration of fentanyl is short, so a medical professional is going to know if this has something else in combination with the fentanyl, because the fentanyl would have worn off. But the answer now is treat with Narcan and repeat treat with Narcan until the patient is being treated by emergency professionals.
Doctor, what are your thoughts? What is your opinion? I mean, what are lawmakers, both local and federal, not understanding or maybe getting right when it comes to the opioid crisis? Is there a way to solve it? What more can be done?
Well, right now what we're seeing is a change from a prescription opioid epidemic to a synthetic trafficking opioid epidemic. Really, a lot of the strategies now are through law enforcement and reduction in trafficking of these synthetic, easily made opioids that don't rely on the poppy plant anymore. Anyone can get the precursors and create fentanyl or create xylazine. So really a lot of the control is through controlling the trafficking of these precursors. On the medical side of things, working upstream to educate patients to make sure that our component, which is the prescription opioids, are controlled and returned when those prescriptions are not needed anymore. But like I said, this is really migrating into the trafficking world. A lot of law enforcement, I think.
Dr. David Edwards is the neurological surgery chief at Vanderbilt Medical Center. Doctor, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Straight ahead on Scripps News Live, American soldiers preparing to train Ukraine's troops to use powerful new battle tanks. Also, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin working to reassure America's allies after classified documents were leaked online. Stay with us.
Are you on Medicaid and Medicare?
The U.S. government recently announced that 12.2 million citizens are eligible for additional benefits beyond what they received from the original Medicare or Medicaid.
These benefits may include $2,500 of dental credit, $900 of pharmacy credit, plus you could be adding up to $164 back into your Social Security check every month. Certain beneficiaries qualify for specific benefits based on income verification.
It's easy to see if you qualify.
Call Go Medicare at 800-718-0414.
And see if you're one of over 12 million who may qualify.
For $2,500 of dental credit, $900 of pharmacy credit. Plus, you could be adding up to $164 back into your Social Security check every month. Certain beneficiaries qualify for specific benefits based on income verification.
This call is 100% free with no obligation to enroll.
At 800-718-0414. Are you on Medicaid and Medicare?
The U.S. government recently announced that 12.2 million citizens are eligible for additional benefits beyond what they received from the original Medicare or Medicaid.
These benefits may include $2,500 of dental credit, $900 of pharmacy credit. Plus, you could be adding up to $164 back into your Social Security check every month. Certain beneficiaries qualify for specific benefits based on income verification. Call Go Medicare at 800-718-0414. If you have recently turned 65, you may be able to enroll in a new plan today that may include benefits like $2,500 of dental credit, $900 of pharmacy credit.
This call is 100% free with no obligation to enroll. So call today.
At 800-718-0414. That's 800-718-0414.
This is an important legal announcement for all firefighters, first responders, airport workers, members of the military, and their families. Firefighter occupational cancer is the leading cause of deaths in the fire service. Cancer accounted for more than 74% of deaths in 2022. You may have been exposed to chemical-based firefighting foam known to cause cancer. If you or a loved one were exposed, you may be entitled to significant cash compensation. Call the number on your screen now for your free case consultation. Aqueous Film Forming Foam, or AFF, has been used to extinguish fires for years. Studies now show there are highly toxic chemicals used to make this foam. These chemicals can cause many types of cancer and illnesses. Call now to see if you're eligible for the cash compensation you deserve without having to go to court. The call and consultation are absolutely free. The time to file your claim is limited, so don't wait and call now.
Just call 800-346-7670 now. That's 800-346-7670.
Make your gift personal this Mother's Day with custom glass prints show love. Images are printed directly on glass in brilliant color and clarity. Turn your memories with Mom into remarkably different prints. Go to tryfracture.com and get 30% off orders over $50.
Bonobos presents A Course in Style with Justin Rose. Justin Rose, champion golfer with a champion swing. How does he do it? Well, let's take a closer look. Is it his flawless form, elite balance, consistent accuracy? Yes, and also those pants. Give me a little more of those pants, will you? Style, comfort, a great fit. These babies can do it all.
Wherever your tour takes you.
This bakery needs new equipment fast to keep up with demand. So they're going to On Deck, the online lender that makes it easy to choose your loan and, if approved, get funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
The U.S. and other allies of Ukraine meeting in Germany for a progress report about what Ukraine needs to turn back Russian forces. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin reiterating Russian President Vladimir Putin miscalculating Ukraine's determination and ability to defend itself.
We reject Putin's grim vision of a world where tyrants get to assault their peaceful neighbors and try to impose self-declared spheres of influence at gunpoint.
Now, Secretary Austin is also working to reassure U.S. allies after sensitive Pentagon documents were leaked online, and he addressed the issue in his opening statement, saying that he takes this leak seriously. He also praised partner countries for their, quote, commitment to reject efforts to divide us. Now, in the coming weeks, the U.S. will train Ukrainian troops on how to use Abrams tanks. The training is going to take place in Germany. 31 of the tanks will arrive in Germany at the end of next month, and 250 Ukrainian troops will then be trained over a 10-week period. Other countries have also agreed to send tanks to Ukraine, and Trent Murray has the details.
Well, America will have Ukraine's back for as long as is needed. That is how Secretary Lloyd Austin described the situation, wrapping up those defense talks at America's Ramstein Air Force Base here in Germany. It is now the 11th set of talks that he has led, with over 50 other countries in attendance, with the main topic on the agenda: what weapons need to be given to the Ukrainians to help defend themselves against Russia. Now, there were two major announcements today that we saw from Secretary Austin. The first was a commitment for America to provide more ammunition and more air defense support to Ukraine, especially as those rockets and Iranian-made suicide drones continue to penetrate Ukrainian airspace, targeting schools, theaters, and apartment buildings, all of which have no military value, according to Secretary Austin. The second announcement, which certainly has got the Ukrainians excited, I think it's fair to say, is this news that America is going to speed up the delivery of those modern American-made M1 Abrams tanks. Now, we understand that the first of those tanks will be delivered here to Germany in the coming weeks. It is here that the Ukrainian crews will be brought over to do their training before taking those tanks back to Ukraine and onto the battlefield to work alongside some of the Leopard 2 European tanks, which have also been handed over in recent months. Now, we also know that all of this is happening right as expectations build that the Ukrainians could be very, very close to launching that major counter-offensive. Secretary Austin saying that the Ukrainians are now getting all the equipment they need to start to push back those Russian lines. He also had a message for President Putin. He said the Kremlin has made a number of grave miscalculations throughout this invasion. He said that he thought Ukraine would not fight back, but it is still standing tall. And he thought that America's unity with its European allies would fracture, but it has only brought them closer together. Trent Murray, Scripps News, Berlin.
All right, Trent, thank you for that. Across the country right now, there's a movement to leave your lawnmower in the garage next month. We're going to tell you about No Mow May after this.
Al, did you make that call?
Honey, we already have Medicare. Why do I need to call?
Alan, the Feldman said we may be able to get additional benefits with a Medicare Advantage plan right here in our zip code with $0 monthly premiums.
Honey, what do you mean additional benefits? We turned 65, we got Medicare. That's all there is to it, right?
I'm talking about Medicare Part C, commonly called Medicare Advantage. We have traditional Medicare, which is only Medicare Parts A and B, but not Part C.
Wait. So not everyone on Medicare is a Part C plan?
No, that's why we need to call, because there may be plans available with additional benefits that aren't covered under Medicare Parts A and B. We don't have a Medicare Part C plan which covers everything in Part A and Part B, plus extra benefits in Medicare Part C.
What kind of extra benefits?
There are great plans that may be available with extra benefits like dental, vision, and hearing.
Did you say dental?
Yes, dental. Medicare Part C plans could include dental benefits that help cover routine dental exams and teeth cleanings, plus dental x-rays, fillings, gum disease treatment, and dentures.
We need that. I'm calling.
If you're losing coverage, moving, or new to Medicare, call to speak with a licensed insurance agent. If you don't have a Medicare Part C plan, call now because there may be plans with additional benefits available that are simply not covered under Medicare Parts A and B, like routine dental coverage. If you're on Medicare, you can call even if you called last year. We will check to see if there's a Part C plan available in your area with additional benefits. Remember, you don't get Medicare Part C benefits automatically. Call now for your free 2023 no-obligation Medicare benefits review. Call 800-817-7602. 800-817-7602.
Sure, you should teach him to ride a bike. Then use Greenlight and teach him how to invest in bikes. Teach him to be smart about money, and he'll go far.
Super far. Oh, hey, Mom.
Navigate the world of money together. Invest in your best investment. Greenlight.
How does Klein Spector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein Spector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein Spector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein Spector.
The Athletic. Subscribe today.
To have kids or not to have kids? That's the question. ITL is talking about climate concerns and how it's become a legit reason to not procreate. In the Loop, tonight at 9/8 Central, only on Scripps News.
Welcome back to Scripps News Live. So there is a new trend gaining popularity this spring. No mow May. Yeah, you don't cut your lawn in order to protect pollinators like bees. Jordan Johnson with Scripps News Buffalo has the details for us.
Here in East Aurora, you won't hear the sound of a lawnmower for the entire month of May. That's because the village is participating in No Mow May.
Every third bite of food that we eat needs a pollinator.
And May is a critical month for pollinators like butterflies, bees, and birds, which can be impacted by herbicides and mowing.
We really suggest that you try natural ways of doing it and just raise your lawnmower and let the grass grow longer. Then maybe you hold your husband back and don't let him mow as often as he might want to.
And one professional beekeeper tells me that you don't have to go all or nothing on No Mow May. All you have to do is leave some space in your yard for the bees.
You cannot mow part of your lawn. If that feels better to you, you cannot mow the field that you typically mow down and let some of the wildflowers grow. And it's only for May.
Erin Halko is the manager at Masterson's Garden Center in East Aurora, and she is a beekeeper. She tells me the growth of native flowers, weeds, and shrubs is crucial for bees. Despite some people's fears, the bees make great neighbors.
They're actually pretty easy to coexist with, so just allowing beekeeping, as a hobby in your town, in your neighborhood, is a really neat thing that you can do, whether you're keeping bees or not. But being open to beekeeping is kind of a cool way to help the bee population.
East Aurora is not the only community participating in No Mow May. Hamburg, Buffalo, and Orchard Park are growing out their lawns as well.
And that was Jordan Johnson reporting for us from East Aurora, New York. Up next on Scripps News Live, Michigan students are using a low-tech device in order to talk with the astronauts on board the International Space Station. We're going to show you how they did it and what they learned. That's coming up.
If you're living with diabetes, this sound may save your life. A continuous glucose monitor provides glucose readings and alerts you in real time to potential lows and harmful spikes without painful finger sticks. It's easy, convenient, and proven to lower your A1C. If you administer insulin, you may qualify for a continuous glucose monitor at no cost to you. Call now. It could save your life. Just call 800-233-6176. This new GCM technology immediately eliminates your pain and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. That means no more guessing. It's easy to see your glucose number any time of the day. Call now and get free shipping. Plus, we'll bill your insurance company for you. Satisfaction guaranteed. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control of your diabetes now. Just call 800-233-6176. That's 800-233-6176.
Attention all eligible Medicare beneficiaries. If you're on Medicare, you can now get COVID-19 tests sent to your home every month at absolutely no cost to you. That's right, get up to 8 at-home COVID-19 rapid antigen tests delivered directly to your home for absolutely no cost, including free shipping. Just call 800-578-1380 now to get your COVID-19 test delivered to your door at absolutely no cost to you. Don't get caught without your no-cost at-home COVID test. Just call 800-578-1380 right now to get your COVID-19 test delivered right to your door at absolutely no cost to you. Just call 800-578-1380 right now. This Medicare program provides easy access to request at-home COVID-19 tests at no cost. If you're on Medicare, call 800-578-1380 right now and request up to 8 at-home COVID-19 tests each month delivered to your home at absolutely no cost to you, including free shipping. Call 800-578-1380.
Welcome back to Scripps News Live. An old NASA satellite fell to Earth over the Sahara Desert in Sudan. The space agency used the satellite for more than a decade to study the sun and its solar flares. The 600-pound spacecraft launched in 2002 and was decommissioned in 2018. It re-entered the atmosphere Wednesday. Now, NASA expected most of the satellite to burn up on re-entry. The agency said the chances of injury to anyone on the Earth were pretty low. And students at an aviation academy in Grand Rapids, Michigan got a thrill this week. They got to talk to an astronaut who was on board the International Space Station using a ham radio. School officials say it was a great opportunity for the students to learn about space.
How many school gyms right now are getting ready to talk to an astronaut on the space station? 1.
November Alpha 1 Sierra Sierra NA1SS. This is Whiskey 8 India Sierra Sierra. For a scheduled school contact, over.
Hello, Whiskey 8, India, Sierra Sierra. This is November Alpha 1, Sierra Sierra. Got you loud and clear, over.
Terrifying, exciting, very cool. I was a little nervous to ask my question.
My name is Kira and I'm in 10th grade. How do you deal with human waste and garbage on the space station? Over.
Thank you, Karen. So we have 2 types, the liquid type of waste, and we do recycle that.
But I thought it went really well, and I mean, who else gets to talk to an astronaut in high school? So I thought it was fun.
How does the lack of sunlight and gravity affect plant growth on the space station? Over.
Thank you, Isabel. So as I mentioned, we do use a special habitat that simulates different degrees of light.
It's just a really cool opportunity for students to use a relatively low-tech piece of equipment, an amateur radio, to talk line of sight, but you're talking to an object or someone in an object that's moving at like 17,000 miles an hour. A lot of time, a lot of effort, but these kids really dove into it. They were super excited about it. It's right up their alley for a STEM school like this, so it was really fun. Great opportunity for them.
How do you prevent or respond to serious injuries in space? Over.
We are fully qualified to perform any emergency procedure on any crew members.
It's great that they do this outreach to help maintain a connection with students so that, you know, our citizens kind of know more about space travel and the importance of it, and what's going on up there and what the benefits are, but also, in particular for a school like ours, it really motivates a lot of our kids to really think about how their chosen career path can lead to a career with NASA or a career as an astronaut, even with one of the civil space companies that are you know, building now. So it's just a great opportunity for them, and it's perfect for our students.
You could be an engineer, a scientist, an astronaut, or a researcher in space. So yeah, seek STEM. Over.
Incredibly cool. I didn't even think they would, but yeah, they just answered questions so easily and so friendly. It was amazing. But I certainly think I was like, oh no, there's